Visual art is a very complex and multi-layered field that will test your patience and will make you shed a tear. Just kidding. To actually be able to offer a satisfying visual experience, inevitably you'll need to claim knowledge about composition, perspective, color harmony, rhythm, values, contrasts, and how to balance them out, anatomy. Wow! All my life experience passed through my eyes just by listening to all these chores. There are so many subjects to grasp at once, how can you even keep track of them all? If there was a possibility to learn all these principles in one exercise, well, I got you covered, sir. I'll divide the subject into a couple of videos, otherwise it could take at least 2 hours to go through, and nobody got time for this. While the painting that you saw in the thumbnail is created from scratch, I'll explain about each principle that I implemented based on that same simple exercise. I also added timestamps for your convenience just in case you're already familiar with some of them. Okay, ready? Let's go. This is the simplest exercise that will make you learn all art fundamentals. Learning how to brush away the details that make structure appear complex at first can make visual phenomena found in reality easier to track, highlighting the fundamentals in the end of the day. Composition can be learned by this one exercise. Knowing how to organize multiple elements to efficiently express an idea is a form of visual language that transpasses any art style. Once you understand these composition principles, you'll be able to apply them effortlessly in any artistic medium. So grab the simplest shaped objects you can find in your house and let's see how we can tackle the first principle. So what is the deal with the symmetry and asymmetry? Why some works clearly have irregularities among the elements and the spaces between them, while other works have mirrored structure? Is there any impact because of it? There is a theory that pretty much connects the principles of balance and symmetry and is demonstrated by the Gestalt psychologist Rudolf Arnheim in one of his studies. He illustrated a rectangular shape where he placed a point. He made several sheets with that idea, but placed it in different areas. He confirmed that the further the point is positioned in relation to that rectangle and closer to the shape's edge, the more it creates the illusion of tension and we perceive it as less and less stable. Most human beings have the tendency to try and solve problems, so we want to bring it towards the center and balance the composition. But only because organic elements have a higher visual impact that pleases our brains, a perfectly centered point could make it appear too artificial and less aesthetic to us. This is why in most artworks, the point of interest or the main subject is usually placed around the premises of the golden ratio. So to balance it out, he added another point in the opposite side to even the weight on both sides. Now it's your choice to place it in a symmetrical or asymmetrical pattern, depends on the emotion you try to evoke. If your intention is to balance the composition with the intent of adding a more monumental feel or a sense of formality, the best type of balance would be the symmetrical one. If the aim is to romanticize the piece, add a more organic look or bring a touch of dramatism to the painting, asymmetrical balance could be the useful one. As a bonus, an easy way to know where to place the most important elements of your piece through the rule of thirds, you can divide the supports that you're working on into 5 equal parts, width-wise and height-wise. After that, count 3 steps for each, intersect the lines, and you found the golden ratio. And with that in mind, another lesson that can be learned through still life is about the focal point. It represents the main element of interest in an artwork, just like a protagonist in a story. The problem being is how you can present your emotions and ideas in an organized way so the main message depicted as the focal point will be readable to the viewer. How a simple still life arrangement can teach that. Look at this arrangement, for example. See how the first thing that popped out was the sphere? Noticed how it got your attention first? See how it's the only form that have a round shape and have a lighter base value compared to the rest of them? It's one of many contrasts that can make an element distinguishable. Generally, the most popular ways to guide and track the viewer's eyes to the focal point is through contrast and guidelines. They are like fingers that are pointing towards a specific spot. In that case, the guidelines may represent the edges of certain objects or even the folds of the curtain from the background, pointing towards the sphere. Contrasts can be used in many ways. Some of them can be achieved through shapes, color temperatures, saturation, values, and even the level of details. There can be more than one focal point. All of them should stand out from the rest of the painting's content, but you still want to create hierarchy amongst them so the work won't be exhausting to look at, creating a clear point of interest, while the others not only reinforce the main theme, but also form a subtle trajectory towards the main focal point through an efficient use of contrasts. Look at this painting. It has two focal points. I would really like to focus on their placement. The first one being Link, the protagonist from one of the most iconic franchises in gaming history, The Legend of Zelda. He captivates the viewer's attention by having brighter, saturated colors than the rest of the painting. The second one is the mountain from the distance, having two main contrasts that attracts our eyes. The first is in the use of shapes. Just like the well-composed still life arrangement where a certain shape will draw your attention, in this specific work there is a round shape in the vicinity of the mountain formed by the cloud on its top. This shape is pretty uncommon in a painting that predominantly have sharp and robust forms. Still, the mountain is secondary compared to the main character because it have more desaturated colors. That's why the character draw our attention first. The second contrast is by color temperature. By having generally cooler colors by the use of different tones of blue, juxtaposed by the rest of the painting, predominantly painted with greens. Green is considered a warmer color compared to the blue, just because it's the combination of blue and yellow, an already warm color established by default found in the color wheel. Now that we know where these two focal points are, we need to understand why they are placed there. Just like the principle behind the points in Arnheim's rectangle, the main focal points are counterbalanced to each other on the support surface, and it undeniably adds to the aesthetics. The tower aligned vertically to the character subtly suggests the placement of the character in the golden ratio vicinity. Here's another painting. I bet the first thing that attracted your eyes was the second character from the right. The artist used three simple contrasts. One of them controls the purity of the colors, the second contrast emphasizes the subject through complementarist contrast, while the third highlights the main subject by applying value differentiation, also known as the clarobscur contrast. The background and the cloth are less pure chromatically compared to the characters, which are painted with more prominent colors, which attracts our attention automatically. Also, bluish tones predominate in the background, which complement the orange tones of the characters. Check out this video to know more about the complementaries. The link awaits you at the end of this video. The second character from the right has a lighter general value compared to the rest of the painting, enhancing our focus specifically towards her. An efficient arrangement of the elements can create balance when it comes to visual weight to enhance the sense of harmony or tension. Now take a look at this work. Why the spaces are uneven? Why the subject is located in that height? And why it have that specific size? These are simple yet relevant questions that can influence the entire mood of the artwork and the way it makes the viewer feel about it. Now let's apply the same principle by placing a basic three-dimensional shape such as this cube right here. Now let's add a portrait beside it that is looking at a certain direction. As you probably already figured, the cubes simulate the oversimplification of the human head. But if you look closely, the way the subjects are composed on the paper are similar. Why is that? It's like there's more room for breathing where the face is oriented, as if there's an horizon in front of the portrait. The same goes with the space from above compared to the lower part. The simple reason would be it creates a subtle effect of gravity. If we move the portrait to the opposite edge of the paper or oversize it so there's barely any space left for breathing, it will give a claustrophobic feeling. It's actually pretty effective if the idea is to add tension and make the scene feel a bit more personal. One of the simplest ways to create a sense of balance in the artwork is by taking into account the likelihood of the object's weight, depending on the material it's made of and its size. The quantity can also play a role, and even the direction of the light source. For example, when you put a heavy object on a table, the most common instinct is to put it as close as we can to its center so it will be less likely to fall. In a scenario in which there's already a number of objects located in a certain part of the table, we want to balance the mass by putting the heavier object slightly to the opposite side of the table. This principle can be applied whether you're using figurative elements such as objects and characters, or even abstract elements like colored shapes with a certain value range that contrasts with its surroundings. The table should be seen as a direct reference to the support on which the elements should be drawn in a way that will give the composition a sense of balance. And here's another thing to keep in mind. Brighter surfaces reflect more light, ultimately creating the optical illusion so the object appears more prominent. Furthering the object from the light source will balance out the composition. What if you got a larger or heavier object closer to the dark, but in the same time a group of brighter objects closer to the light? Who gets the priority? Because dark values inspire heaviness, the heavier object will have the priority and will be given more space, so it won't give the sensation that everything falls apart. Another way to solve this problem is by adding an extra object with similar characteristics around the other half of the scenery, creating balance through association. I'd also like to point out that if the goal is to convey a sense of uncertainty, danger, or urgency, leaving the bigger or darker object closer to the shadows or the edge of the scene will be more effective. As for the last example, if the object is positioned in the middle of the table, or in a case of a portrait, is oriented towards the viewer, what you really want to do is to leave a bit more space in the direction from which the light is coming. And that will add a sense of an expanded environment beyond the canvas, while breaking the symmetry and the artificial look simultaneously. Now, how do you know how much space to spare for the cube in that particular case? Well, similar to the painting with a portrait, you have to think about the space three-dimensionally. The more the nose or that specific surface of the cube is oriented to a certain direction, the more you want to leave space for breathing and expand the horizon. The more the head is oriented towards the direction of the viewer, the more the position of the viewer becomes that horizon. Still, you have to be careful about the size of the object depending on the subject of interest. Let me explain. If the still life is the main subject, leaving too much space can give the impression of imbalance, making the entire work feel flat and render the subject as unimportant, as if they've been punished and asked to stay in the corner. As a counter-argument, you can intentionally leave more space if the idea is to emphasize additional details from the surroundings, like the folds of the cloth in the background or the atmospheric light that shines through the curtains, for example. But the still life takes a back seat as a supporting element, adding to the storytelling of the scene. Look at this cyberpunk city concept art. Like the window with the curtain, the environment is the main subject. But like the smaller still life, the character works as a supporting element, used as a measurement to highlight the colossal size of the inescapable corporatized forest. I really appreciate if you got this far into the video. Did you find this video useful? I'm really curious to have your feedback. Also, sorry for the slow upload. My life is a bit full of side quests right now, and I'm really trying to find some time to make content here and there. Thanks again, and I'll see you on part 2. Bye bye!